Is it working?
What is up, everybody? Day 4 of our Alt Ohio to Erie bike tour from Portsmouth, Ohio on the Ohio River back home to Northeast Ohio had us waking up in Kaiser Lake State Park's campground. We were heading off through the country on what should be a 70-mile day with about 1,000 feet of climbing, the destination being Delaware Lake State Park. Most of this day was going to be out on country roads with only a bit of bike path. Most of the climbing on this day was going to be in the first half. There would be a few lumps and bumps in the second half of the day, but generally the route would have us going downhill after about 30 miles, as this area a little bit south and east of Bell Fountain, Ohio, is the highest area of the state. That would turn out to be a real benefit later in the day, as, you know, the miles were just starting to accumulate on loaded bikes, and the 80-mile day the previous day just had everybody a little bit more tired. Personally, I didn't sleep that well the night before, so I was feeling a little bit more sluggish at varying parts of the day than I had been before. We would be passing through a couple small towns earlier in the day, but we had already done the research to know that nothing was going to really be open. So our first destination was going to be a coffee shop and bakery in West Liberty at mile 15. We're on the Simon Kenton Trail.
Oh, what the heck? What the heck, man?
Yep. Here we are picking up the Simon Kenton Trail. We would only be on it for a little bit, but we have ridden this trail all the way from Springfield to Bell Fountain, Ohio, on a different version of Ohio to Erie we did before. And we also did an overnighter where we rode part of this trail with the crew from Cyclotherapy, that is a bike shop based in Springfield. Whoops. On the map, it looked like the trail connected to the road there, but it was a bridge, so we had to jump off and do a little bit of a grass cut to get down to the road. Our stop here in West Liberty turned out to be a really pleasant surprise. You never know what you're going to get at some of these smaller town cafes and coffee shops, but everything here was homemade and they were actually baking things. The coffee was good. So this turned out to be a great breakfast-ish stop. The other thing we all did was grab extra sandwiches and food for later in the day, as again, we knew we were just really going to be out there and there wasn't going to be a lot open. We'd actually be passing a winery and a brewery way out there in the country, but as I mentioned in the last video, we had been leaving a little earlier than we normally do on this trip, 8:30ish in the morning, and nothing was going to be open yet at the time that we would be passing through. Clear. Being that these were all new roads again, I didn't really know what to expect from the day, but it was nice that it was more a little bit of rolly country, smaller farms, just stuff to keep you entertained and better views. You know, I've definitely been in this parts of Ohio where it's just massive farm fields and nothing to see forever. This wasn't like that at all. It was actually a very, very pretty ride through the countryside. This was one of those you-pick berry farms. I get that people love them as couple activities, and maybe if you're a family, your kids should see what a farm looks like a couple times, but I have zero desire for you-pick stuff. I would rather have the expert farmers do the work. I feel the same way I do about self-checkouts. Hey, I don't work here. I did also work on a farm for almost 10 years, so maybe my farm work days are behind me. For a while on this day, it was just me and Aaron riding together. Ben had stopped. He was filling up water bottles and stuff like that. Brad and Ames were just riding a little stronger and were up ahead. So the two of us were just riding together and chatting, but the whole group did come back together a little bit later. Erin had mentioned around this time that within the next 10 miles, she was hoping to find a place to stop, eat some snacks, and just relax for a little bit. So we did start to keep our eyes open. It's also at this time that we had come back together with Ben, as he called us, but there just wasn't really a lot out here for a while. It's also worth noting that, we are clearly out in the sun, but it is about a 90-degree day with a lot of humidity as well. So if we were going to stop, it needed to be a place with some shade. So part of the crew ended up stopping at the winery that wasn't open and just sitting at a picnic table. Aaron and I just sat under a tree on the edge of a farm field, and we ate our sandwiches there and just chilled out for a little bit. While we were eating, Ben came by. He said he just felt like keep moving. Then Brad and Ames had passed us, but you could see they were stopping there to refill their water bottles, and I think they were checking the map to see if there were any other resources out there, which there just really weren't. So we ended up passing them, and then everybody catching up again a little bit later down the road. Last year, around the time that I'm recording this, I did a couple days riding to Ann Arbor solo, 200-mile days, actually over 100-mile days, and that was fine. It was all new roads, and it was just 2 days. When I'm out on a longer tour like this with my friends, it makes me wonder how far I could go solo, because even with friends to talk to and stops to make, once in a while, days still do start to drag a little bit. So I don't know. I'm not sure I have it in me like some of you guys do to ride super long solo bike tours. Something I'd be interested to test out with going a little farther on my own. Anyways, here we are at the camp store checking into Delaware State Park. We went and got everything set up. This was like more of the traditional campground at a state park you would expect. But the thing was, the lake was a little farther away, or the swimming lake was. So we got everything set up, we got changed, and then we headed off to get another swim in. As I mentioned in the last video, we were trying to swim as much as we could on this bike tour, and this was one of the best beaches yet for swimming, with a really nice sandy beach, and the water wasn't quite as warm as it was on the last swim. It was a little bit more refreshing, but wasn't cold by any means either. We knew our next stop was the marina. The marina was supposed to have a store with some food. In their literature, it said hot dogs, so all we kept talking about is how many hot dogs we were going to eat when we got to the marina store. Well, it was a big womp womp, because when we got there, they did not have any of the hot dogs going. They did have ice cream and drinks, but not what we were looking for. Anyways, I did have some camp meals with me, so it was a camp meal night for me. Ben and Ames actually rode like a 10-mile round trip to go to Wendy's, which I thought was amazing. I was not up for that. I was happy to make my camp meal. Day 5 with my pirate friend here. Car back.
Hashtag heatwave.
Erin had got a little bit cooked in the sun, so on this day she was actually wearing one of my shirts to keep a little bit of the sun off. We actually stopped and bought suntan lotion, something I rarely ever wear. I just like to keep mostly covered up, and also I just usually develop a tan and can be all right. But with less bike trails on this trip and more country roads, we just ended up being out in the sun a lot and had to protect ourselves a bit more. On this day, as you can see, we had to start off on kind of a busy road. That happens a lot around state parks just because a lot of people are driving there and those roads get developed. But again, it was one of those sections where it's just 2 miles and then we were back off into the country. This day was scheduled to be 84 miles with about 1,500 feet of climbing. Part of that climbing would be a railroad grade on a rail trail, and another part of it would be getting up to the final campground. Right there is a market that we had originally hoped would be open, but this is the 4th of July, so we had looked it up, and a lot of things were going to be closed on this day as well. We saw some detour signs, but we decided to risk it. This was a bridge that was out, but we were lucky and we were able to get across. There were just some big rocks here that we had to hike a bike over. Nothing too bad. Most of us managed to keep our feet fairly dry. But then there was a second sign for another bridge out, and we were like, we've already gotten lucky once. Let's just do a little bit of a detour. I don't even think it added more than a mile to the day, though. Here we are arriving in Centerburg, where we'd be rejoining the official route for the Ohio to Erie Trail. We were at about mile 30. It was another brutally hot day, and we were all really hungry and really thirsty. So we were really glad to find an open place, this kolaches, which is also a kind of food that we weren't familiar with, but was really good. These real doughy things and with different fillings inside of them. So now we were out on the Heart of Ohio Trail. Aaron and I had decided to head on to Mount Vernon, where we were going to stop at a grocery store. The rest of the crew stopped at a gas station back in Centerburg, and they were going to catch up with us at that about 10 miles down the trail. This would also be where Ames would be leaving the bike tour. She had a big race the next day. Really wasn't going to be that far off the route, but it was supposed to be a really tough race, and she decided instead of going and camping again and then having to get up and doing a really tough mountain bike race, she would get picked up here. So our buddy Bob Darrow actually picked her up here at the station and took her home so she could sleep in her bed, get her race bike ready and all those things. So we chilled out in Mount Vernon for a little bit before heading back onto the trail. It's been a number of years since we've done the Ohio to Erie, so it's actually kind of interesting to be back out and try and remember it. It became a running joke of, I've never seen this before in my life, even though I think we've done this part 3 or 4 times. We beat that joke to death, as we tend to do, till we couldn't even tell whether each other were joking or serious anymore. But it's one of those things I always think of because it's really fun to go back out and do something you've done before and have those memories and those traditions build up, maybe some nostalgia for certain parts. But I also then always think, like, do I want to do something I've done before, or do I want to see stuff completely new and different like we did in the beginning of this trip? So let me know down below, do you do a traditional trip where you ride the same thing every year? Are you one and done? You've done it before, so you want to mix it up and do something completely different. Forrest is like, hey, look, it's fucking Axl Rose. There we were, just joking a little bit about Erin's outfit again and her attempt to keep herself out of the sun as much as possible. We did stop for some supplies there in that town, and by supplies I mean some drinks. Ben had already had 1 or 2, so I decided, hey, why not grab a White Claw. This is the Bridge of Dreams here, a really long covered bridge. There's also really great gravel roads around here, and this is where Ohio's biggest gravel race takes place, actually, the Black Fork Gravel Grinder, which we've done a number of times. This part of the trail is really fun. You do that railroad grade climb I had mentioned, but then you can really send it down the other side. And we did. We were really pedaling into it and cruising along pretty good. So the trail ends here for a while. We saw, though, that they are extending it. And then after talking to our buddy Nate the Great, he actually did Ohio to Erie just a few weeks beforehand. And he said the whole thing was actually rideable. So we went out on the traditional route on the country roads, just not being sure if we'd have to backtrack if we took the trail. But if you're out there and you're there in the weekend or in an evening, it's technically rideable. Do it at your own risk. Road and traffic-wise, this would be the quote-unquote worst part of the Ohio to Erie official route, though it doesn't bother me at all. I think it's really pretty. I don't mind some rolling hills and stuff like that, but I just know from when I used to be on Facebook and in the Ohio to Erie group, I have heard people complain about that section. This is Killbuck, Ohio. We knew this was our last chance to gather any supplies we would want for the evening. We were heading to Turkey Hollow, a campground that's not on the official Ohio to Erie Trail, so we'd be breaking off the Holmes County Trail here and then heading that way. The climb up to Turkey Hollow is really tough, loose gravel, so it's worth noting. I've talked to a number of people. I actually talked to a person who knew the channel out on the trail earlier on this day who had stayed here and said that he had to push his bike. I made it the whole way, so humble brag right there, but it is a tough climb. And after doing this really, really steep, loose gravel, tough climb, the best thing is there's a pond here, and it sits up on this hill with this beautiful view. So every year we've camped here, we have just rode right to the dock, dropped our bikes, stripped off the clothes, and jumped right in.
Calling your shot.
Through a weird coincidence, every single time we've camped here, it's been 4th of July. So it's nice to see that it's been a number of years. They've made some improvements. It looks like they're building a big shelter that might be for like wedding type stuff, but they've also added some primitive style showers, but that are heated. So it's kind of just this hose situation here, but there is a propane tank and the water is warm. It's just open, so this was a shower in the bathing suit. But like I said, when I swim, I don't always care about getting a shower, but on this night I did. The pond, you know, it's a farm. There's cows around. There's a lot of flavor in the water. I definitely wanted to rinse it off. And then this was another camp meal night for me. As you saw, Aaron and Ben had grabbed some supplies in Killbuck, though. Though not as bad as the way in, there is still a pretty tough climb out of Turkey Hollow as well. So you get nice and sweaty right away when you're leaving this campsite. So this was the final day of our tour. This would be from the Turkey Hollow campground back to the OTET Trail, and then everybody was just riding home to wherever they lived in Northeast Ohio. It was planned to be about 76 miles and 1,600 feet of elevation. We knew we'd be on bike trails for a while. This is the Holmes County Trail, which is shared between horses and buggies, and the bike trail, you're each supposed to stay on your own side. There are also a lot of Mennonites on e-bikes out on the trail, and they will blast right by you, women in the full getup. A lot of people think they're Amish, but most likely they're Mennonites if they are owning and riding e-bikes. We stopped at this little cafe not too far into the day, I think 5 miles, the Daybreak Cafe. This spot turned out to be great. The breakfast food was fantastic. So, again, didn't really know what to expect. I thought it was going to be just a whatever style, typical greasy spoon, but the food was really, really good. My footage might be a tiny bit out of order on this day. My main GoPro's memory card was getting almost totally filled, so I switched between the one I had mounted as well. For some reason, the metadata didn't record, and I couldn't always remember exactly which order things went in. But in general, we were out on the bike trail, a little mix of country roads, but then once you get to Fredericksburg, you are off the Holmes County Trail, and then you are out in the hilly area of Amish country. I think this is one of the best parts of the official Ohio to Erie Trail. It's very, very pretty, but it is very climby and hilly comparatively. So I know a lot of people don't really like it. Again, with that Facebook group, people would always complain about it, and I'm like, put it in easy gear and enjoy it. You also get a bomb down those same hills you had to climb. But yeah, for me, I think this is really enjoyable, especially when we're heading in the other direction, because it's been the beginning of our ride before. So this would hit in the evening of the first day on our way to Turkey Hollow. But even on this day, we were all prepared for it. We knew the section of trail here, or section of the route here, was going to have the hills. I have to say, I was really impressed with Erin on this day. She climbed like a champ. I was a little worried. It had just been a long bike tour, a lot of miles and out in the sun. But yeah, I think she was prepared for it. And like I said, it's just kind of the prettiest part of the trail anyways. Just a few miles outside Dalton, Ohio is this spot owned by Larry. He is a warm showers host, and he has tent sites available. But for us, the great thing is he had cold water out there, so we were able to refill our bottles after all the climbing. He actually happened to be there and came over, and we got to meet him. Really cool guy. He grabbed my camera and took some photos for us. But yeah, this is a spot that I've seen in everybody's Ohio to Erie videos, but it's the first time that we've actually ever stopped there. So when you come through Dalton, Ohio, then you will be picking up bike paths again, and it'll be all bike trail the rest of the trip for the most part. You'll be jumping on the Sippo Trail in Dalton, Ohio. You'll take that into Massillon, and then from Massillon, it is the Towpath Trail all the way up to Lake Erie if that's where your final destination is. The Sippo Trail was mostly crushed limestone. I had totally forgotten about this little paved section here until we hit it again. But it looks like they've done some work on the bridges on the Sippo Trail, and they were much nicer to enter and exit than they used to be. We stopped under this bridge for a minute to regroup and discuss the next move. We decided we were going to ride into Massillon and get some late lunch and sit in the air condition for a while. We were all kind of getting to the point where we wanted to be home, but it was still going to be a long day. We still were going to have about 35 miles after Massillon, so we realized we should sit down and eat some real food and chill out for a minute. Actually ran into a cycling buddy here at Paradigm Shift Brewing, Terry, so it was cool to see him again. He lives in the area, and he knows like everything about the trails and cool places to ride down in this part of the state. So from here, it was Towpath Trail home, the trail that we know pretty well. I stopped at Ernie's Bike Shop, which is right after this area where you ride on the levee. It's actually a little restroom and water fountain owned by the Stark State Parks. So I had forgotten to refill my water bottles at Paradigm Shift, so I stopped to fill up, use the restroom, and then I caught back up to everybody. We were kind of cooking down the towpath, taking turns on the front. I think I did about a 4 or 5 mile pull myself. It's really pretty down here, and I really enjoy it, but it was like that mixed thing of, you know, you're out for a great ride, you're enjoying the trail, but you're also kind of getting to the point where, you know, you just kind of like to be home. If anyone ever rides through Canal Fulton, there's a great ice cream stop right here, Cherry Street Creamery. I know a lot of people who ride the trail stop there, so if it's the right time of day, it's something to keep in mind. This is the next town up of Clinton. There isn't really anything there but a drive-through. I always end up watching a lot of Ohio to Erie trail videos when they come across my YouTube feed. One of the reasons is I like to see what people think of the area that I know. I think it's really cool. I'm obviously biased, but there's all these wooden bridges and stuff like that as you start to head towards Barberton. And I think as when it comes to a traditional bike trail or bike path, this one being a towpath, not a rail trail, I think it's one of the best there is in the area, in the whole state, I would actually say. So after we passed through Barberton and got to the areas that we ride, I don't know, I feel like I'm down here at least once a week, we slowed down and we actually started to reminisce about the trip a little bit, talk about the favorite parts that we had and what we enjoyed the most, if there's anything we would change, all the packing arrangements. We actually did a live stream where we delved into a lot of that stuff, so check that out if you're interested in learning a bit more about that. So this is Summit Lake. It was used as a reservoir for the Ohio and Erie Canal. And I remember when they built this wooded bridge so we could get through this area, but the original canal did have a bridge so they could pull the canal boats over the lake. When we arrived back in downtown Akron, there was a baseball game going on, and it was Akron's bicentennial. So there were a lot of people around, as you can imagine. They kind of had this temporary mural wall built up here you'll see on the left, and all the food trucks and everything are on the other side of it. And then beyond that is Lock 3, where all the activities for the bicentennial were happening. I'm kind of bummed that I missed the bicentennial in my town, but at the same time, I thought about coming back out later in the evening, but I was cooked. It was at this point that Ben had broken off. He was heading back home to his neighborhood. Me, Brad, and Aaron here are crossing over the Y Bridge, which goes over the Little Cuyahoga Valley. And then Brad was breaking off to head to his home in North Hill. Me and Aaron were riding together through here before I broke off to go back to the studio. And she still had a few miles left to head to get back to her house out in the other part of Cuyahoga Falls. It's kind of an unceremonious way to end a bike tour where you don't all get together and have a drink and get to celebrate, but I had my Rheingeist truth with my little buddy Edmund. So 460 miles over 6 days in the books. That'll do it for this video. Check out our little merch store down below, and I will see you in the next video. Thanks as always for watching. Peace.